This episode of Golf Smarter Mulligans is brought to you by DynamicGolfers.com. So I'm 60 days into my stretching and mobility 15 to 20 minute daily video sessions using the app from DynamicGolfers.com, and I can honestly report that I'm feeling more fluid, stronger, and in less pain than I've been in a long time, especially after walking 18 holes. But there's more to Dynamic Golfers that I'd like to share with you. In their library of workouts, everything is based on the daily stretching and mobility program, which I've been doing, like I said, for about 60 days now. I've done 60 times. But over the next few weeks, I'm going to introduce you to other programs they're offering because you may have other needs that will serve you better. This week, we'll talk about something that may have a lot of appeal for golfers of any skill level, and that's golfer strength training, which you do 3 times each week in conjunction with the daily mobility program. So you get longer and more effective workouts 3 times a week. Beginner is a 1-month stretch program of 12 sessions. Intermediate offers a 3-month strength training program that's designed to build upon the base you've developed with the 1-month program. And then there's the advanced 3-month program that includes whole body routine, upper body routine, core and stability routine, and continues from there. Now, recently I received an email that reported that dynamicgolfers.com/golfsmarter wasn't working, but that's been fixed and updated. So for only $9.99 a month, join golfers worldwide that make Dynamic Golfers part of their daily routine. Go to dynamicgolfers.com/golfsmarter now to get a 7-day free trial and 15% off your membership when you check out using the coupon code GolfSmarter. Check them out today and let me know what you think. And do it now because this exclusive discount offer for our Golf Martyrs won't last forever. DynamicGolfers.com/golfsmarter and use the checkout code GolfSmarter when you sign up today. This is really one of my all-time favorite sponsors we've had on Golf Smarter because it provides significant benefit for all golfers, no matter your skill level. And it's basically for the price of a sleeve of balls, if not less. And even if you only play once per month, you're probably going through a sleeve, if not more. Again, that's dynamicgolfers.com/golfsmarter. And remember, to get the discount, enter Golf Smarter at checkout.
Welcome to Golf Smarter Mulligans, your second chance to gain insight and advice from the best instructors featured on the Golf Smarter podcast. Great golf instruction never gets old. Our interview library features hundreds of hours of game improvement conversations like this that are no longer available in any podcast app.
I actually had a conversation with Jackie Burke a couple of weeks ago, and he still feels that golf is probably the most overtaught sport in the world. Back then, they were starting to see that it was being overtaught, and they didn't want it to go in that direction. They wanted to keep it simple, make it a fun and exciting game for people to go out and play. Jackie told me the other day, he said, most people today still look like they're chopping wood. And there's no reason for that. They don't need to be hitting at that ball. They need to learn how to swing a golf club. And the only way you learn how to swing a golf club is to, as Jimmie Demeret used to tell me, see it, feel it, and do it. And not get caught up in just trying to hit it.
With another interview from the archives of Golf Smarter, here's your host, Fred Green.
Our guest today is Eben Dennis, a PGA teaching professional who grew up around golf and has an amazing story to tell that sounds like it came from a movie script. In last week's episode with long drive champion Sean the Beast Pfister, you heard us talk about the work that he's done with Eben and the impact his lessons had on Sean's success. Eben and Sean both agree that it's all about the hands, and now you'll get to hear why. Welcome to the Golf Smarter podcast, Eben.
Hello, Fred.
How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. And yourself?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm so glad to have you on the show because you've got some really interesting credentials. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people who've read lots of books and who've worked with different instructors and have had the opportunity to even be the instructor. So some names that we recognize. But you have a different approach to it. I loved your approach. You're one of those golf lifers that is kind of like a Forrest Gump character, aren't you?
I guess you could say that.
Yeah, I just did. You've come in contact with some pretty impressive golf names.
Oh, yes, I have. I can't even tell you how lucky I was growing up. And starting in 1962, we moved out to Champions Golf Club, which is in Houston. A lot of people may not have heard of it, but it's where Jackie Burke, one-time Master champion, one-time PGA champion, and Jimmie Demeret, 3 times Masters champion. And I think Jimmy won 40 or 50 some odd tournaments on tour in his career, where they own the club. And we had the 1969 U.S. Open out there, which I was fortunate enough to caddy in as a teenager. And we had 4 or 5 Houston Opens there. We had the Ryder Cup matches there in the early 70s. And so it was just unbelievable, all the people I got to know, like Arnold Palmer and Julius Boris, and Ben Hogan was down there on a regular basis. And, of course, being exposed to Jackie and Jimmy every day, because we literally live 500 yards from the clubhouse, just made it an incredible experience. And I got to know things about golf that people just don't get to hear or see. And I don't know what better way to explain it other than I was just blessed.
Yes, absolutely. And it's not as if you were just some kids standing around on the side overhearing conversations. You actually worked with these guys, right?
Yes, I did. And I got to talk to Hogan on several occasions.
Wow.
Jackie Burke personally would go out and teach me, and so would Jimmie Demeret. And obviously I got to talk to Julius Boris, another mentor of mine when I was growing up, and a little bit later when I was getting out of college. And when I turned pro myself, was Bruce Crampton was very instrumental in teaching me sand play. And so, again, and the other thing was I got to play with and were friends with Bruce Litsky, Ben Crenshaw, Tom Kite, Fuzzy Zeller, and several others. That's who I grew up around. And so I got to see them when they were teenagers playing and when they turned professional and started winning everything.
Wow. You have really had the opportunity to bring name dropping to a whole new art.
Well, I mean, again, that's how lucky I was. But people don't understand how much you learn, especially in a city like Houston, where golf really, a lot of golf, especially golf instruction, evolved from.
Tell me, now I've heard the name Jackie Burke has been brought up numerous times on this program. Give me a little bit about Jackie Burke on why people keep referring to the teachings of Jackie Burke.
Well, the reason they do is because it's so common sense, it's so simple, and it all evolves back to his father, Jack Burke Sr., who taught Claude Harmon, taught Ben Hogan, taught Byron Nelson, taught Harvey Pinnock, and there were 1 or 2 others I can't remember. Oh, of course, Jimmie Demeret, and of course his son, and he had this approach that golf was supposed to be simple. And I think you're familiar with a gentleman in your area by the name of Fred Shoemaker, who uses a technique of throwing the club out in the driving range with his students to learn how to release the club. Well, Jack Burke Sr. did that back in the 1930s with his students.
Wow. Yeah, Fred Shoemaker has been on the show multiple times and generates more interest in listeners than probably any single name that we've ever had on this program.
Yeah, and I understand he's wonderful. I've got a good friend who's the director of instruction with the First Tee program nationally, and he and Fred are good friends too. And I guess he talks to Fred about me and talks to me about Fred.
Oh, that's nice.
So apparently we're very similar in philosophy, the keep it simple, but yet make it process-oriented.
Interesting. So now with all this instruction that you did and all this, not instruction that you received and this priming that you've received from these great names, were they primping you to become one of the greats on the tour?
Yes, they were. Back when I was a teenager, I was as good as anybody in the state of Texas. And then when and I ended up with a full golf scholarship to Florida State University from that, but through the encouragement of them and through Jackie and Jimmie. But more than that, they recognized that I had a lot of talent because I was a scratch handicap by the time I was 14 years old at Champions, which back then was one of the more difficult courses in the country because it was 7,000-yard par 70. And we're talking about back in the 60s when that was a very, very long golf course.
That's a very long golf course and a par 70?
And a par 70. And so anyway, I got to play that every day. That was my home course and literally lived on the golf course on the 14th hole of the Jackrabbit course, which was the other course, and right across the street from the 9th fairway of the Cypress Creek course, which was the tournament course. And I think the Jackrabbit course was probably harder than the tournament course. But I played them both equally, and played them, I couldn't even tell you how many thousands of times. From age 9 to age 22, I played those golf courses, but it was a bunch. And so, I got to experience that and a difficult golf course with a lot of trees, so I had to learn all the shots. And so they recognized that I was willing to work at it. And they were prepping me not only to be a great player, but they were prepping me to also pass along great knowledge to other players. Because Jimmie Demeret actually used to tell me, he said, Eben, you are a steward of the game, and it's up to you to pass along the right things, not the wrong things.
That's really nice.
I'll tell you something else that they told me, and I actually had a conversation with Jackie Burke a couple of weeks ago, and he still feels the same way, that golf is probably the most overtaught sport in the world. Back then, they were starting to see that it was being overtaught, and they didn't want it to go in that direction. They wanted to keep it simple, make it a fun and exciting game for people to go out and play. And like Jackie told me the other day, he said, most people today still look like they're chopping wood. And there's no reason for that. They don't need to be hitting at that ball. They need to learn how to swing a golf club. And the only way you learn how to swing a golf club is to, as Jimmie Demeret used to tell me, see it, feel it, and do it, and not get caught up in just trying to hit it. So in other words, the focus is in the wrong place. But had I gone on with my pro career, and I tried to, I probably would have been on tour, with the exception of that I ended up with a bone disease of the spine that created severe back problems that made me quit playing professionally at age 26. And I actually started suffering when I was age 17, and it went downhill from there. And so I could, by the time I was 19 or 20, I could actually see the handwriting on the wall that my career was going to be pretty short.
And at what point did you decide then I have to be a teacher?
Really, I didn't. I dabbled in teaching even when I was a teenager. They encouraged me to help. Jackie and Jimmie encouraged me to help other players, which I did. And so I always dabbled in teaching, but I went into the business world after I gave up golf and didn't start teaching full time till 15 years ago. So, but at the same time, I was teaching players like my brother, who's 13 years younger than me, and spent 10 years on tour. And we just kept it simple. We always kept it simple. The only reason that he actually lost his tour card was he started listening to the quote-unquote gurus on tour and lost his ability to play freely.
What do you mean?
Well, what I mean by that is he started thinking about his golf swing, which he'd never, ever thought about from the time he was 2 years old.
Bingo.
It just felt right to him.
Right, okay. So that, when you talk about keeping it simple, that is something to me that is frustrating in talking to people like you who start when you're a little kid and you get great advice and you just, like even today, I can go shoot free throws that I've been doing my whole life, and if I haven't shot them in a couple of years, I'll go out and it'll just feel right? I don't have to think about it.
That's right.
But for so many of us who start to play golf later in life, I started in my 40s, it's not that simple to not think about it.
Well, you know why?
No. Help.
The reason
That's why I
is
talk to people like
the reason
you.
is if I'll give you a scenario. If you started riding a bike when you were 4 years old or 5 years old, okay?
Yeah.
And once you learn how to ride the bike, even when you're 50 or 60 years old, you can still get on a bike. You might stumble a little bit at first, and then you'll figure out your balance points, and you'll go down the road on your bike.
Total confidence. No issues, not even thinking about it. You're absolutely right.
All right. If you never rode a bike till you were 40 years old,
terrifying.
You'd be terrified, but you'd eventually figure it out. And you would figure out the balance points and how to stay balanced on it, and all you'd have to do is try it. Fall a few times and try it.
Right, but if you were to get on the bike once a month, you'd have to think about it for a little while before you start, moving along. And then as I'm riding my bike. It's nice and free and easy. And, oh, my God, I have to stop. What do I have? Oh, I have to think about this now, right? It's not just natural thought patterns.
That's exactly right. And the reason that is because once we become analytical and we start overthinking the process of things, we lose the freedom to experiment with balance.
Okay.
And with controls.
So that's the thing that I see as a golfer who starts later in life, who just picks it up, gets addicted, and wants to do nothing but play golf to try to get better. It's the over-analytical part that, to me, is the hardest thing to get rid of.
Well, it destroys them. And I see it all the time, and I can use an example of one player that I teach. I only teach him like once a year now, but when we first started, he'd been playing golf for about 5 years and had retired from business. He was in his late 40s when he started playing golf, and he was terrible. I mean, 5 years later, he was still a 20-plus handicap, and he played every day, and he just couldn't get any better. He hit this little weak slice that went maybe 170 yards off the tee, and he could hit his 7-iron almost as far as he could his driver. So every club was going about the same distance. And so we started working on it, which took time to get him out of his analytical process and get him to feel things. He went from a 20-plus handicap down to, the last I checked, he was a 4 or 5 handicap.
Whoa. Wow.
Now, it took a couple of years because he was a highly analytical anyway. That was just his nature to be analytical. Just one of those CEOs of a business, sold the business and thought he had to overthink everything. And so I spent more time undoing than I did doing for him.
And then did he dedicate himself to getting down to that 4 handicap? Because I've recently...
Oh, he wanted to be a scratch handicap, and he's actually not even very athletic, which was the funnier part, is he's awkward. Huh. And he was still able to get into a low single-digit handicap.
But as somebody once said on the Golf Smarter podcast, that you can always tell how many days a month a person is working by looking at their handicap. A 4 handicap means that he works about 4 days a month.
That's right.
Okay, that straightens that out.
No, actually, more than 4 days a month if you want to be a 4 handicap. But unless you learn early on. I mean, like me, even with my physical problems.
Actually working, not working at golf, but I mean a job.
A job 4 days.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Maybe less.
Yeah, no. You work 26 days a month at golf.
Oh, yes. But, there's guys that work 26 days a month at golf, and they're still 15, 20 handicappers.
Right.
Which is sad.
Well, it's the definition of insanity. They just keep doing the same thing over and over, and it doesn't get any better because they're doing the wrong thing, right? They keep repeating it.
That's exactly right.
All these instructors that you work with, all these amazing people that you worked with, did they pile on books to say, read this, or do they just have you hitting balls?
Well, I'll actually tell you the best story about that. No, they did not encourage me to read books at all. In fact, back then, they thought that the biggest problem with most of the tour players was they were too caught up in analytics even back then. And a great example was... I'll think of his name here in a second. Does a lot of golf courses. Had the most beautiful swing back then. And anyway, Tom Weiskopf.
Yay!
Okay? And Tom Weiskopf would come to Champions all the time to try to get advice from Jackie and Jimmie. And they said, you don't need us, you need a psychiatrist because you think too much.
Mm.
And that was why Tom Weiskopf didn't win more tournaments than he did, because he didn't know how to play dumb. He thought that he was smart enough he could figure out how to play perfectly. And so all he did was put stress on himself. But getting back to the real answer to your question,
do I need to change the name of this show from Golf Smarter to Golf Dumber?
Probably so.
Forget it. Ain't happening. After 5 years of this thing, there's no...
Golf Instinctively would probably be a better name.
Yeah, well, that's not going to be the draw of the people like myself who are looking for advice. And it's like, smarter? Okay, I'll do that. We need the over-analytical people.
Well, you need the over-analytical people, just like the gentleman I was telling you about, so that you can show them that the best way to analyze is to eliminate. And once you eliminate all this excess baggage and information, you can play with a lot more freedom. You only need 3 or 4 basic things you have to know in order to play excellent golf. And one of them is balance. And balance is not what most people think it is. And then another one is control. And control is pretty easy to figure out what that is, but that's just the control of the golf club. But most people don't control the golf club properly. Okay, and the last one and the most important one is vision. And nobody uses their vision properly. They use their vision to focus in on the golf ball instead of focus in on the experience of the swing or of the shot.
I need you to keep going with that. I'm not going to let you finish.
All right.
Yeah, you got to go.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I gave you a chance to ask a question about that if you want to. But
I'm just going to let you talk.
Okay. But let's go back to balance. Let's start with the first one, balance. It's got to be dynamic. We're going to be in motion during this golf swing. So we have to set ourselves up in a way that allows the body to react instead of act, instead of trying to turn the shoulders, turn the hips, and do everything out of sequence and out of balance. We need to let it flow naturally. And the only way it does that is if the eyes are basically the leader and the hands and the body are the followers. Well, the hands come first, and then the body goes behind the hands. And the only way that happens is when you truly turn it into an eye-hand game. It's just eye-hand synchronization or coordination. Once you learn that, all you have to do is give the ability for the hands to work in a space that makes it easy for them and the body to work together. When it's difficult and you're having to manipulate and you're having to recover balance during the swing, now all of a sudden it's difficult to play a golf shot. But when you add the vision to that, or well, let's go back to control. When you have proper control of the golf club, where you're holding the club as if it's a weight suspended in air, rather than you're pushing down on it to try to hit at a golf ball, but you're just carrying that weight back and forth the way it was originally designed to work, which is for ease of use between the hands and the body, then all of a sudden golf shots are not a problem. You're no longer hitting at a ball, you're making a swing that the ball gets in the way and bounces off the golf club.
Right. That the swing point of contact is not the focus. It's really just a middle part of your swing.
It's the middle part of your swing. It's part of the whole motion. And the motion itself, you don't have time for details in the motion itself. So what you have to do, instead of trying to create the motion or the positions properly in a golf swing, you've got to create the vision of what the swing is going to feel like. In other words, now your eyes come into play. Now they're guiding what you want to have happen. Like driving down the road in a car, you know you want to go to the grocery store. You've already mapped it out in your mind. So all you do is you follow that map up to the stop sign, take a left turn at the stop sign, and go to the grocery store, and you pull in the parking lot. Well, that's the same way with the golf swing. You just say, I want to hit a high fade, and you're feeling it through your eyes and your hands what that should feel like. and then you're just making the motion that will create that and take you to that destination at the end of the swing with that feel.
As long as you understand how to achieve that high fade.
Well,
like for me, I don't hit a draw because I still don't understand how to hit a draw.
Well, the reason most people don't understand how to hit a draw is because they don't use their eyes properly.
Mm-hmm.
And a draw, let's put it this way, if you were going to take your hand, just either hand, and you were going to make a semicircle that would emulate a draw in a golf shot, you wouldn't take it from out to in to back out. You'd take it from in to out to back in.
Yeah.
And semicircle around you.
That's what
you do that through vision. And the exact opposite is true if you wanted to hit a fade. You'd allow your hand to go from out to in to out. Okay, so that'd be the shape of the shot. Well, your eyes have to lead that parade. If your eyes don't do that same or similar thing, the hands can't do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So in other words, to play a draw, you have to map it out with your vision before you play the shot, and then during the shot, you have to allow the eyes to work the same shape that you want the shot to work.
Awesome. So that's in your ebook. You talk a lot about hands lead the way.
Yes, the hands are the critical part because that's the only connection between you and the golf club. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to fully answer a question you asked earlier, and you'll like this answer, and that was about reading golf books.
Right.
The best story was one time I went into the club, and Ben Hogan was sitting in the club, and I went over to talk to him because I already knew him at the time, and I went in and I said, Mr. Hogan, I've got a question for you. I said, I've been reading your book. The 5 Fundamentals, and
which is pretty much a Bible, for so many golfers. Yeah, it's like you got to have that in your shelf or nothing else.
Exactly. And he looked at me and he said, "Son, if you're stupid enough," and he used some expletives. If you're stupid enough, because he was very colorful in his language, if you're stupid enough to follow what that book says, then you don't deserve to be playing golf. He said, because that's a description of my golf swing based on my injuries and my abilities. It is not anything to do with what you're capable of.
Wow. That's not a story that gets out very much, is it?
No, it is not.
That Ben Hogan didn't think highly of his own book?
He did not think highly of his own book. He thought it was just a description of what his golf swing looked like.
Oh, that's so interesting. So then I guess the ultimate question is there a perfect golf swing?
No. The only perfect golf swing, well, let me ask you this. I'll put it in a question rather than an answer. Is Iron Byron a perfect golf swing? The machine? Technically, yes.
Right.
Can it play a high fade?
I think technically
it's a 20-mile-an-hour wind?
Yeah, right. I think technically it's a consistent golf swing.
It's a consistent golf swing. So
I think that's what they're saying is like, yeah, we had the exact same swing every single time. Understood, but is it the perfect golf swing?
There is no such thing as a perfect golf swing. Wow. What does the shot require? We're on an uneven playing field with all kinds of outdoor conditions, and we're using different tools for with our imagination. Well, I might use a 3-iron from 110 yards if I decide that's the right play, versus using a sand wedge. If I can see a creative shot that I can pull off with it.
It's about the shot making.
It's about the shot making. It's about the imagination. And it's about understanding that it's no different than if you're walking down the street and you're skipping, or you're jogging, or you're walking. It's your choice. You do whatever you want, but it's your choice. You're the one using your creative imagination to do this action.
So if Ben Hogan thinks his book was crap, mm-hmm. and you're saying there is no perfect golf swing, it's all situational. It's mm-hmm. dependent on that moment. That's right. Are all the services provided, the golf magazines, the golf TV channels, even the analysts, when we're watching a golf tournament and they're talking about Jim Furyk's swing or Charles Barkley's swing, are they doing us a disservice? Are they teaching us something or feeding us information that is impeding on our progress?
I believe so, and here's the reason why. Here's the reason why, Fred. I believe the reason it doesn't work is because there's too much conflicting information out there. 2, they're trying to get you to do something that they have described what it looks like rather than what it feels like. And it's so important for us to be able to feel it. It'd be like trying to describe how to eat with a fork. If you had to go through the technical details of eating with a fork, we would starve to death because we wouldn't be able to figure out all the muscle movements. Mm-hmm. Yet we do it without thought. And here's the other thing. Our hands alone have over 1 million combinations in the muscle movement. Over 1 million different possible combinations. Well, if that's the case, if I change the pressure point in one of my fingers, that's going to change the way the shot reacts.
Sure.
Okay, so how can I teach someone all these perfect golf swings if I can't even get them to get the combination right in their hands, which it's impossible to. They just have to get it to where it feels right to them. If you have someone strong in the fingers, someone's weak in the fingers, you're going to have 2 totally different results. If you have someone who's got frozen hips or a frozen shoulder, you're going to have totally different results than somebody who's double jointed in those areas.
In our last few minutes, I want to ask you about your website is powerfeelgolf.com.
That's correct.
And I also I want to ask you about what that means, but I also want to talk about the people that you've worked with, that you've instructed, and what you focus on in your instruction. I think it's mostly short game now, right?
It's a lot short game, but there's actually a lot of them that I do everything with. It just depends on the player.
I see.
If they trust me enough. Now, again, a lot of them might think that for the full swing, my approach is too simple. It doesn't have enough information. They want to know more. And those players will never be tournament winners unless they have such an incredible short game that it overrides how technical they are in their full swing. And that's kind of hard to blend. You really have to give it up on both ends. You really got to learn to be a feel player from driver to putter if you want to maximize your abilities. But I'll give you a great example. One guy that I taught, Billy Mayfair, and I worked with him just on putting. Well, everybody says, well, he's got a terrible looking putting stroke, because he kind of cuts across it. Do you know that when I worked with him on putting, I did not try to change that? All I did was I got him to focus on what it felt like at the finish of the stroke in relationship to where he was going, and his putting improved dramatically.
Interesting.
And because I couldn't take that loop out of his stroke without making him feel uncomfortable.
And that's gonna make you go backwards. I think that's a problem that I have with a lot of with golf schools.
One size fits all schools?
Yeah, well, there's that, and there's just golf instruction. I've heard so many people come back with, as soon as I finished going to this school, my game went down until I started figuring it out. Then it got better, but it just went in the toilet immediately after the school.
That's right. That's right. And that's actually more the norm than the exception, which is a shame. But I think if golf instructors would take the approach that all we're going to do is teach balance, control, vision, and show them how to see creative shot making, let them decide how they want to swing the golf club. Especially if we teach them vision, we'll get them off the golf ball, which is, how many times have you heard, keep your left arm straight, keep your head down, keep your eye on the ball?
Too many times.
The 3 worst instructions you can get. Absolutely the 3 worst you can get. Why would you want to lock up a joint in your left arm, which would be your elbow and your wrist, and make it where it can't fold up at the end of the swing like it's supposed to?
Interesting.
I mean, why would you want to do that? These joints are meant to work in opposites with the left side and the right side to balance each other out. When one side is out of balance to the other side, then it makes it very difficult for the body to perform at its premium. And why would you want to focus on hitting the ball when that's not the end of the swing? If you focus on hitting the ball and keeping your eye on the ball, that's you just thrown a huge roadblock in the way of swinging the golf club and allowing the ball to bounce off the club. Besides, the golf ball only weighs just over 1.5 ounces. How can we hit something that weighs so little? It's a feather.
Yeah.
We have to let it bounce and fly.
Right.
We can't hit at it.
Right.
Because we have to slow down to hit at it. But when we swing through it, then the ball just simply takes off. If we have good control of the club, now it's got a solid object to bounce off of while we're swinging it.
Interesting. I mentioned that you focus mostly on short game. You had told me that you'd worked with Nick Faldo on his short game, on his putting.
Well, I worked with him on everything, actually. But
really?
We focused most on his short game for the 2000 U.S. Open at Pebble Beach, and we were able – there were actually two things we did. One, which you'll love this one, he used to take a minute – when I first started teaching him, he took 1 minute and 20 seconds from the time he would draw the club out of the bag till the time he would make his swing. Now, that's forever.
I would have been yelled at for that.
The average on tour is about 30 to 40 seconds.
That's
somewhere
an
around
eternity.
there. Well, think about it. You're pulling the club out. You're stepping up behind the ball. You're addressing the ball. You're doing all that. About the quickest you can do it is 15 to 20 seconds. That's quick. Okay. So 30 seconds is about the average. Well, I got Nick down to 20 seconds. We took a minute out of his routine. But it was all extra thoughts that he had in his head, so we were doing a process of elimination, not addition.
Uh-huh.
We were cutting things out. Then we got specific on the putting with a focal point, and it was actually a trick I used with some of my better players to teach them how to focus on the feel of where their right thumb, if they're right-handed, is the inside corner of their right thumbnail is pointed at the end of the stroke. Well, what that did was that made them use their vision to guide their hand to the proper place to make the proper stroke. So they didn't think about the stroke. All they were thinking about was pointing. Excellent. And Jackie Burke used to tell me the one who points best, putts best.
Ooh. I like that. Always looking for little quotes like that, yeah. Yeah,
that's absolutely true. You don't realize you do it, but you're actually pointing your hands toward the target, not the putter face, not the putter head.
Oh, wow.
And the ball will go wherever your hands go, good or bad.
Right. I know that you've worked with Sean the Beast Pfister.
Yes.
Long drive champion, who's going to be on the show pretty soon. But he's a long drive champion. Did you work with him on hitting the ball long, or did you work on his short game?
We actually worked on hitting the ball long. I worked with him and Brian Pavlett at the same time in the early 2000s. At the same time I was working with Faldo on everything. I was working with them, getting them ready for long drive competitions. And they ended up finishing first and second in 2001 with Sean beating Brian on the last ball of the competition by 1 yard.
I'm reading Sean's book right now, and
you probably read about that.
I read about that. He says probably the highlight of his career was that moment. It was,
And it was hilarious because Brian called me in tears and Sean called me ecstatic. and but it was funny because I worked a lot more with Brian, actually, and Brian was the more talented of the two, but Sean was the more competitive of the two.
Interesting. And that's the way it comes across in his writing, too. It's like, don't look at me like that. I'm going to beat you to a pulp.
That's Sean to a T. The other fun part was we didn't teach them how to hit it harder, or I didn't work on teaching them how to hit it harder. I taught them how to be more efficient. Mm-hmm. In other words, I taught them how to swing easier to hit it farther.
Well, that's one thing that we didn't cover at all, and that I wanted to talk about, but we're out of time, is about tension. And, and how much tension in your swing is really going to work against you.
Well, I'll just say it one way, and there's only one place tension comes from. If you tense up by grabbing at the palms, you'll be tense throughout your body. If you relax the palms of your hands and you firm the fingertips, you almost cannot tense your body. So, in other words, that's the key, is in how you control the club in your hands.
I think that's a really good place to leave people thinking right there. And let everyone know, again, the website, powerfieldgolf.com. You have an ebook on there that you're offering for free.
That's exactly right. For the time being. I may change that, but for right now, they can go on there and read it for free.
All right. You just click on the link that says the book, but you also have a DVD that you sell?
Yes, and right now, they'd have to contact me personally in order to order that, so they'd have to look at the contact information on the web page. I currently am redoing the site so I can get the e-commerce back on it, but for now, they can just contact me, and we can work out how to get it to them and how to pay for it.
You know what? Let's make it easy. We're going to put it on the Golfer Smart here at golfsmarter.com. We'll have that available. So if you want to get the DVD done, is it also called Powerfield Golf?
Yes, it is. It's just a DVD version of the book. It basically it's a 30-minute DVD that explains or actually shows how to implement some of the things that are in the book. And also there is a grip that goes along with it that's a training grip that I developed. It's made out of foam, but it's to strengthen your fingers, and it's also to teach you how to hold it correctly in the fingers.
All right. Well, we're going to have that DVD with the grip available on our website at the Golfer Smart at golfsmarter.com. So you don't have to. You can please check out powerfieldgolf.com. But if you want to buy the DVD, make it easy. Just do it from the Golfer Smart. And you are instructing, but you don't just instruct locally in Texas.
That's correct. I'm working on doing things all over the world. If someone needs me to come do outings, I can bring former PGA Tour players for course management and for entertainment. And also, yes, and so we'll go anywhere in the world to do the instruction. If they want us to come in and do personal instruction with their kids that are up-and-coming players, or they want to make up-and-coming players, then we can go anywhere.
All right. Well, contact me. Click on the Hey Fred button at golfsmarter.com with your question for Eben, and I will make sure that it gets to him, and we'll put you in communication with one another. Eben, thank you so much for appearing on Golf Dumber.
Well, we used to say that some of the best players when we were kids were like Andy Bean, who played dumb.
I'm not even going to go there.
No, seriously. Andy was a great guy. He's a good friend of mine, but he was not the brightest bulb on the shelf, and he played dumb. Crenshaw did the same thing.
Amazing. Thanks so much for coming on, and hopefully we'll have you come back and get some more specifics from you on not only balance, control, and vision, but maybe we'll get a bunch of questions that you can answer from our listeners as well.
That sounds fantastic. I really appreciate it.